and welcome to the Growth Advantage podcast. Today I'll be speaking to Karen Chetwynd, Chief Executive Officer at Montessori Global Education and author of #1 new release, Led by the Child. It's great to have you here today, Karen. How are you and where are you joining me from today?
Rebecca, thank you so much for your time. I'm in the southwest. Actually, I'm down in Somerset. Our team is global, so I could have answered you from all manner of countries in the world, but today I'm here and I do reside down in the southwest.
Lovely. And what inspired you to write Led by the Child, and how does its central message align with that truly child-focused approach that defines Montessori?
Thank you for that really detailed question, because you can imagine at the moment I've been asked that quite a lot.
Yes.
The evidence is on the front cover. Those are my children right there. I think a lived experience is what's brought me to write that book. I'm fortunate to be the CEO of Montessori Global, and I think I took over this particular role just over a year ago now, and our messaging has needed support, it's needed refocus, and it's needed to address many misperceptions during this first year. And it felt appropriate, therefore, to really put a mark in the sand, as it were, to put the mission in the book, to make it absolutely clear to myself, as well as the rest of our team and our wider public, that actually to be led by the child is something that hopefully the majority of people reading the book will have a sense towards. We haven't met many audience members for whom that isn't what they intend, they want, but it's a struggle to get there, actually. And to put it all down in the book felt like the opportune moment to lay it out. You might call it a manifesto. That probably sounds a bit grand. To be fair, it's a vision statement as we move forward, as we continue to grow, and as we continue to make Montessori accessible to everybody.
Fantastic. And how does the philosophy of leading by the child translate into practical strategies for parents and educators, especially as Montessori Global Education works to ensure the approach remains beneficial for society in the 21st?
Excellent question. Again, I'm going to say there's a speed element to it. There's a confidence to be taken from slowing down, from taking our time. And to follow the child means that we are somewhere in the background. We are not driving the front. We're not dragging forwards. We are nurturing, supporting, giving guidance, but we are following. And by definition, that does give us something to do with our speed and our momentum, and something about the way in which we have a tendency to rush from A to B, a tendency to rush from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And of course, that's the way of the world. That's the way of life. But if you take a moment to look at children in their own environments, they are not rushing. They are exploring, discovering, working out, investigating, having a wonderful time by all accounts. And actually, in society, we're seeking a mindset shift. We're seeking our own holistic development. We're seeking opportunities for work-life balance is the term that we all strive for in our adult world.
Absolutely.
But actually, children have it. They've already got work or effort, life balance, because it's every moment for them. So certainly from our perspective, the tangible way to get in is to find methods and ways to take our time, to observe every single moment. One of our taglines is opportunity empowers. It's an opportunity, even when there's challenge, when we stop, when we look, when we try to analyse and solve problems, there are opportunities there for growth. And it feels that that's the most hands-on, it's the most tangible way for practitioners and parents to try to instill a Montessori approach would be to take our time and really see what's in front of us.
And, that's really succinctly put there. And what are some of the challenges, the key challenges in communicating the true essence of that child-led approach to a broader audience, particularly in diverse global contexts?
Yeah. Montessori is both a blessing and a curse as a wonderful, wonderful name. And I mean that sincerely because, of course, the legacy of Montessori is significant. It's amazing. It's substantial. It's where we were, where we are, where we continue to be. But of course, that was over 100 years ago. And society is quite simply not what it was when Maria Montessori was operating in that context. And we have to have absolute conviction and belief that as a forward thinker, as a pioneer, had she been in this scenario here in 2025, we have to imagine that all of the advantages, you might say, that we have here to us in 2025 would have been at her fingertips. And therefore, the integration wouldn't be quite as much of a stretch as some of us imagine. And the authenticity is something we're often asked around a Montessori approach. We
Yes.
tend to choose a word of sustainability. And
Right.
that gives us a much broader sense of giving ownership to the philosophy, the practice, to parents, to educators, because they can look to the Montessori philosophy as something they can embed as they become the educator that they want to be, as they become the parent educator that they want to be. And ultimately, if you are following the child, that flexibility is non-negotiable. You have to have a flexibility because we're following the child now. We're not following the child now, but in the guise of 100 years ago.
Yes.
And our children are living in this moment now. And so the idea of the philosophy is absolutely able to span the test of time. That's not in question. But we must be willing to see that in the context of now and challenge ourselves as to how we apply that. So certainly some of the potential, I would say, misperceptions around Montessori is a certain way. I think we have to have some historical context there.
Yes, of
And
course.
Montessori is of that moment, but that is of that moment as well.
I totally can understand what you're saying there. I can imagine that some people have that conception of it being an old-fashioned approach, but like you say, it can adapt and it can sort of mould to how the world is in the 21st century, because it deals with, as you say, children's learning and being child-led in the moment and as things are at each stage of time, if you like. So I can totally understand that. Could you also elaborate on the unique synergy between the Montessori Centre International and Montessori St Nicholas Charity, and how this combined structure strengthens the Montessori Global Education's mission?
Thank you. Yes, happy to. We are very proud. The Montessori St Nicholas Charity has a long, long legacy stemming right the way back to some of the earlier establishments of Montessori herself. Fast forward a little bit, and of course, as businesses do evolve and change, and teaching methods, and we moved from correspondence courses, distance learning, everything that used to be the way of the world. And we get towards and Montessori Centre International, MCI, was born, and that was a London-based college. And many people were coming all over the world to come for residential, you might call it. They would come, they would study intensively. But as time moved on, of course, life changed, particularly in the UK and the HE sector, and degrees became something a little bit different, and foundation degrees came on the scene. And of course, not long after that, really, we had COVID. And
Yes.
of course, the difficulty for many practitioners was placement and access to schools and so on. Around that time, we made a really significant step forward, and we started to ask ourselves, we were very fortunate to have the charity behind us, but where could we do the best, most beneficial work? And quite frankly, that meant not having a central London office and expecting the world to come to us. And so the organisation made a shift. We no longer have a London headquarters. And as I took over into this post, we have a significant global team.
Right.
And that feels appropriate. That feels as if we can pass on the messaging, as we absolutely mean to, that training can happen everywhere around the world in terms of a practical sense, a hands-on experience. But we are fully committed to blended online learning. And therefore, we have study packages where somebody's in Brazil studying with someone in Birmingham, and they're all online together and they're learning from each other. And actually, that really replicates the concept of global education that we are, of course, very open to in terms of when we all talk about children and learning. We want them to understand the world around them and the bigger part that they play in the globe. And of course, educators are no different. And we had a conversation between some educators just the other day wanting to know the finite detail of something particular in Africa, but that person was sitting in London.
Right.
So that sharing of information is hugely beneficial to our community. And we feel that the legacy that we've been able to bring with us, our experience of correspondence training, very early days in distance learning, things that Montessori educators in days gone by were very comfortable with. It gave them access to that wonderful authenticity of Montessori. We've stayed true to that, and our VLE is completely developed to be an adult Montessori learning experience. It's transformative, in the words of many of our learners. It is not your average online learning experience. It's a holistic Montessori experience, and that feels right to draw the community together and to keep the legacy going of that really connected training.
Fantastic. I love that sort of global approach where people are breaking down those barriers, those borders, and mixing and getting to actually experience
Indeed.
different cultures, etc., all through the online learning. That's amazing. And as the leading provider of that educating training, what are the most crucial elements of your qualifications and courses that ensure high standards and authenticity in the Montessori practice globally?
Yeah. I will take that in two parts, if that's all right. From a
Sure.
qualifications perspective, we design to the highest quality. And that means, particularly in the UK, a leading provider of education, but globally recognised as well. And our full diploma qualifications are on the UK register. So they're on the Ofqual register, and they are supported by NCFE Cash. So one of the leading names in early years practice as well. So we make sure that we stay true to the necessary standards of delivering some of that type of qualification. We have commitments and partnerships with universities for higher education around the world. But equally, we have a significant portfolio of our own internally awarded qualifications. And the reason that we do that is because CPD, continuing professional development, matters. It absolutely matters. And we feel that there's potentially a little gap forming between what might be deemed statutory CPD and the stuff that everybody has to do, and that's where the time and focus goes. But when the time and focus, and often the financial resource, gets swallowed up, we're left with practitioners of many years' experience often, and the newly qualifieds, who are not able to access CPD for them as an educator, as a practitioner, in pedagogy, in the art form of teaching. And so we
Yes.
feel it's our duty really to keep pressing forward with a broad portfolio, short courses, a few hours, micro credentials, through to more specialist qualifications. We have an infant and toddler specialist at the moment, for example, which is very timely for the UK market particularly.
Yes.
And these are easy access qualifications. They can be attractive to individuals or teams, popping your whole team on something, which is then a more collective experience. And that opportunity to respond to what the sector needs feels absolutely the right way to move forward. We've made modular courses as well to make them a little more attractive for people who maybe can't commit to a whole significant piece of study. Life may not allow that at this time.
Yeah.
And we've also started to bridge out into modules that might be attractive to other industries, leadership modules, for example,
Right.
which will give us hopefully a chance to really get to our mission of making Montessori available wherever it's needed. And it's certainly needed to follow the learner, follow the individual, and certainly in a business capacity, to follow our individual staff members is certainly a big tick in terms of workforce development as well.
Of course, that's so important. And could you share some examples of the social impact initiatives undertaken by Montessori Global Education and any specific outcomes that you aim to achieve through these efforts?
Certainly, thank you. Some of them align with our training portfolio. And one example I can give you specifically is introducing our very foundation programme, our Introduction to Montessori, together with our infant and toddler specialism. And we introduced that training package to Home Start, particularly in West Somerset, where I am down here, to the whole team. And the reason that we did that is, of course, Home Start is a fabulous initiative that is very different regionally around the country. But the thing that is a golden thread is that commitment, that dedication to community, and the dedication to supporting those who just need that little bit of extra advice and guidance, and perhaps a hand or a shoulder at the right time of their lives. And to give the training directly there to people who are not going to be moving into the next school or the next nursery and a
Yes.
more traditional route, but to make sure that that accessible practice was there at the fingertips, has been significant. We have seen local, regional conversations spring up where young parents often, who perhaps have not had the best education experience themselves, but they are absolutely doing what they need to for their family. They are seeking Montessori. They are asking, where's the Montessori playgroup? And of course, unfortunately, these things are not tangible. They are not available.
No.
And so there becomes a growth pattern that actually communities will start to emerge themselves where they're trying to fulfill this. And I think that's stunning that we've got the word Montessori back in normal conversation in a perhaps a place where we wouldn't have expected it initially. So
That's
that's
really
just
good.
one example, and offering that training on the ground there has led us to creating a slightly different piece of training called Montessori. And this is a focused 6-session effort to really give confidence back to parents as the first educator.
Right.
And that sense is something that family hubs are picking up. We have some connected partners overseas. We have pilot programs in Mexico, in Peru. We're going to be starting in Germany, because who doesn't want to strengthen, support, give confidence to parents for those earliest moments with their babies? Because if we get the foundation right, we're on to a better place for the rest of the conversation. And it's so important. If education does anything, it can empower. And we need to do that at the earliest opportunity. So just 2 examples there.
Absolutely. No, they're amazing examples, and I think you're right, especially mentioning parents. I think so many parents now feel that they lose the power to sort of educate their own children or to be involved, and everything is so structured and driven in the direction that everyone feels they have to go, and they feel sort of perhaps a bit disconnected from education in many ways. So I think that's a really, really good approach, and hopefully word spreads and people get that empowerment back from those very early ages, educating their children. Also, looking at the future and the impact of the Montessori education now, obviously Montessori Global Education aims to ensure the approach is beneficial, like you said, in the 21st century as much as it was in the 20th century. What key adaptations or evolutions do you foresee for Montessori education to remain relevant and impactful in this rapidly changing world?
I think you have led us beautifully to the concept of digital education, of AI. It cannot be ignored. It shouldn't be ignored. It's not a choice. It is part of where we are, and it is certainly part of what our children are going to be doing. And if we are following the child, that's the direction we'll be following them into. And in a very positive way, we'll be following them because information, answers, ways of analysis are going to be more at their fingertips than it ever has been for us before.
Yes.
So this isn't something to shy away from, but this is something to be responsible about. And certainly at our youngest ages, there is potentially, we've heard the Princess of Wales very succinctly in her essay just recently, indicating that there could potentially be this growing disconnect if this isn't attended to. I don't think all is lost yet by any stretch, but certainly families, and this comes back again to this idea of empowering parents, families have a very important role to play in this introductory period, really, into digital education. So you mentioned quite rightly, Rebecca, around the potential disconnect, and IT and tech is one of those potential barriers, because often we're a society, we're a community, a generation where it isn't our first language to be on the tech. We've all had to learn what to do, whereas it's absolutely the norm for our young people. And so we must improve ourselves and come forward a little braver, perhaps a little bolder, and ask questions. I have no problem asking my 7-year-old what to do to log on if something won't work, because he knows what to do. And I don't think we should shy away from that. But I think to not be part of the conversation is a mistake. And therefore, if we put our own barriers up, us being the entire education sector, or even sort of parents as a whole, if we put the barriers up, I think we'll end up not being in the right position that we wish to be in terms of taking some sort of charge supportively around how that AI work is going to evolve. It's going to affect our curricula. And as I said, if we are following the child, it can strengthen us to actually approach the curricula that come forward in a really meaningful way. So I think that is absolutely one of our biggest challenges going forward.
I think that's really great to hear, that you want to embrace it and move with it, because I think there's so many barriers being put up, perhaps from our generations and older generations to it. But we've got to face that facts, like you say, it is what young people need to be aware of, and they know so much more than we do at their young ages about using technology, AI, and various things, and it's only going to continue to grow in that direction. Embracing that is so important.
Rebecca, just to take a moment, I was at a panel event some months ago now, and the key session was learners, so pre-teens, but they were on a panel and we were listening to them, and their finishing message: thank you so much for planning our future, checking our future, getting everything ready for us, but we are here now. This is our life. This is education in the moment for us now. How powerful is that message?
Amazing, a
And
very
so
good point they
simple, isn't it?
make. Exactly, wow, that's really powerful. Coming from young people, especially, so fantastic. They are recognizing that living
Will
in the
stay with
now
me.
is what it's all about. And hopefully we can support them now as well as in the future.
Indeed.
What are the biggest opportunities and challenges you encounter in scaling quality Montessori education and training to diverse regions and cultures around the world?
Yes, accessibility and everything that means. Sometimes there are countries around the world which we're talking rural regions. We've got a physical problem in terms of accessing anywhere with a roof over its head, or not. There are Montessori buses. There are some rural initiatives where a fully equipped with educators bus will travel around to the regions to make sure that we're trying to support, I suppose you might say, as much as best we can. There are initiatives which we are absolutely thrilled to support that have recently come to our eyes because of the work we've done with the 100 Foundation. So we did a global call last year for very significant child-centered practice. We weren't concerned about the word Montessori. We wanted to see the philosophy in action. We've stayed so closely connected to about 14 or so of the sort of lead projects from that initiative, and they are changing the world, but they are doing it in a way that actually is not a traditional educational format. So it's so important that we can see, recognize, scale, champion these projects, things such as you see curricula around the world move and shift to more traditional academic subjects, some subjects start slipping by the wayside. And of course, many people in our population thrive on interest around subjects that actually move them. It may
Yes.
not be English, maths, science. There are so many subjects that can move them. And of course, if we see projects which are championing the arts, championing creativity, expression, championing problem solving from a STEM perspective, but linking it directly to work so they can see the outcome in industry. They understand the connection for the young people that are working on the projects. All of these initiatives through to movement projects to get people up and out and with a racket in their hand and do that and then come back and learn this and learn while you're moving. All sorts of innovation going on. And we only have to open our eyes and it's there. But these are individual projects. Many of them are charities or NGOs. They're small scale, growing themselves. They're trying to find their next connected project, and it's tough out there. It's tough everywhere, of course. But where we can offer support, those are the areas that I think we really have an opportunity to shine a light on and to say that if we are following the child, then we need to make sure that we've got something on offer for everybody. And that
Yes.
is certainly not 30 plus people in a room doing the same maths problem in the same way at the same time. That doesn't add up. That's not following the child.
No, I totally agree. And of course, that element of applied learning as well, I find it very bizarre that children don't leave school knowing things about how to pay the taxes or what a mortgage is and things like that. The kind of things they actually need in life. So I think, making sure that learning and courses and experiences are sort of based on application in real world situations is so important. And I think it's seriously lacking at the moment. So it's really refreshing to hear you sort of touch on that subject there.
Thank you. I mean, we don't understand abstract concepts on our own, do we? We need something to connect them to. And yes, we can't apply all the clever maths for our taxes if we don't understand that's partly what it's for.
No, we might know how to work out a tangent off a circle, but we don't know how to pay the tax.
Indeed, that's what I needed it for.
So how do you measure the long-term societal impact of the truly child-focused approach, both through the educators that you train and through the children who experience Montessori education?
Yeah, I don't mind telling you that is hard. That is tough. That is the challenge. I don't think you'd speak to any NGO that doesn't constantly think about how it's trying to measure its impact. Of course, and our trustees want us to do that. Quite right, they should. But it's hard because education is truly generational. And actually, we need to be able to move to the future. I need to be able to see the wonderful tiny people that are benefiting from our Montessori program, for example, where they're 6 months old. That's lovely. So I need to see them when they're 26.
Yes.
And I can't get there yet. We haven't yet devised that bit in our innovation. But I think it's important that we start to recognise the different bits we can value and measure. Certainly our with our Montessori program, we'll just stay on that example, how parents feel at the beginning of a six session program, and how they feel at the end, what they are now able to do, and where they will go for answers, questions, challenge themselves to grow and continue to develop. That's something fairly significant. And those are the types of evaluations that we focus on at the moment. We are very interested in trying to find ways always to measure the value of opportunity, because really that's what education provides. But that's a tough one. That's really
Yeah,
hard.
I
So we
totally
do
can
focus
understand you.
more on individual stories. We follow the learner, we follow the individual, and we want to know about them. I've always said that anyone we connect to, be it one of our learners in our community or one of our more significant global partner organisations, we're not in it for the short term. We're in it for the long term. And therefore, we want to hear from them again and again. We want to know where their journey takes them. And that's the best, I think, approach that we can have, certainly at this moment, for education, because it impacts everything that they do.
Absolutely, totally makes sense. And like you say, it's such a long journey. So tracking everybody's journeys must be impossible, but it must be nice when you do sort of manage to track people from childhood to adulthood and see how the impact that the Montessori education has had on them.
Well, we've got one example where somebody at the earliest stage of being a parent started to explore Montessori, and that took them through into their child's toddlerhood. And of course, their child then started to go into educational experiences themselves, which freed up a bit of time for parents. And parent went back to study because they hadn't had the opportunity at their time to study. They realised they had a passion, went back to study, took the necessary qualifications, set up their own establishment to support other parents and families. That's significant for
Amazing.
us.
Yeah,
That's career development as well. So
fantastic.
those are the things we can tangibly measure, and we'll stay with those for now.
Fantastic. And how do you go about funding a Montessori Global? Is it from fundraising, paid courses? What are the different various sort of funding streams?
Yeah, thank you. It's a mixture. We are very fortunate that the charity has been made good choices over its entire legacy. And of course, much of that comes from the original growth of all of the training model that I was describing earlier on. We continue in that guise. So, of course, training brings in income. We find that the models that we try to work on now at the moment, everything is tight. Every funding partner is tight on budget at the moment. We completely appreciate that. And it's about selecting the projects where there is going to be the most significant impact, so that you know that it was worthwhile. Of course, it's all worthwhile, but the pennies only go so far. And we
Yes.
very much feel that our community, and certainly over the last 18 months, this is something we've striven to really develop, is that our community want to help others. We know that. And actually, there is a very emerging theme of being able to support, perhaps if we've got a cohort of training, we have a specific amount of bursary available to augment that training, so that actually the training access is going to places where otherwise there is just no chance. And this is a global market for us. We do want to make sure that there are countries in the world who have never experienced Montessori, and they are having a resurgence of interest, or perhaps an initial interest in the early years voice at all. We are very fortunate in the UK that our little people are present for us and are very much part of our everyday existence, but there are countries in the world where that is not the case. And so for Montessori to be present in those newer locations is equally important.
Of course. And how do you go about that outreach, brand awareness, and sort of what difficulties have you had around that?
Yeah, I mentioned it was a blessing and a curse, didn't I? And that's to do with preconceptions, really. We are presenting a modern version, you might say, of Montessori, but primarily we're promoting a sustainable model of Montessori, which stays very, very clearly with the philosophy. The materials that are talked around with Montessori, which are so integral to the practice in the educational environment, are tools. And we all know that tools are only as good as the person who's able to wield them to a certain extent. And unfortunately, around the world, there have been moments, stories where we've seen, the Montessori room, and then the door is closed again, and then the children use the rest of the space. And surely this is not the essence of follow the child. The philosophy has somewhere been put second in
Yeah.
that type of environment. So certainly when we are emerging when we're trying to have these conversations that allow us good connection. I've been met with, why is Montessori interested in this? I've been met by some of that. And we have to tackle that head on and say, because we are here to make a difference. We want Montessori to be available at the fingertips of anybody who needs it. So any parent that's included in the educational sphere, anyone who's trying to find that correct, that right, that feeling, that sense of fulfillment for a child, Montessori needs to be available. It needs to be there as an option, a choice, because it's a way of life. It's a way of valuing those experiences that are so integral to our small people, and seeing them, absolutely seeing them and taking them at face value, that their experience is so important. So I think we have opportunity to continue to do that. I don't think we certainly haven't even scratched the surface, really. We've got much more opportunity to do that, but that's our aim. Thank you. I am constantly learning. My children are 7 and 3. I am constantly learning. Everything, every day, every moment, is seen in a way that I don't see it, they see it. And it's my job to look at that and to see it with them, and for them to take me on that journey. I think I keep that very much at the front of my mind, and I have to. For those of us with young children, we understand that really does drive your day. You don't have any other choices. So I think that's on a personal level something that every day is very present for me. But when I reflect, and I have with the book coming out just a few weeks ago, I did significant reflection, particularly over the summer months, around how I found myself in this position. I've been an educator, I've taught for many, many years, and I find that everything around the work that I tried to do, the teaching positions that I took, the work that drove me through my earliest part of my career was all led by a Montessori philosophy. And I think more than ever, I now realize there were so many moments where, for example, my background is significantly in dance, performing arts, musical theatre, those sorts of areas. At the earliest days, I was thrilled to be there with the cast, but I knew that I wanted to make sure we were all doing the right thing, for example, rather than be the one at the front. And now I realize, of course, that was me supporting, educating, nurturing. I was the one, at the back doing another rehearsal because somebody asked me a question. And I was educating before I knew that's what I was doing. And certainly as I moved into more facilitation, more teaching, more direction and production work, I realized that was my space. That's where I was most comfortable. And to recognize that about oneself, I think led me then to see that other children also need these opportunities, that they don't know what they're going to be. And it's not for us to tell them, but it is for them to find it out. And that means giving them the chance, very simply, explore, discover, investigate. Those are the things that matter. And I believe that's probably what I've done through my career.
Fantastic. It sounds like you've had a really interesting journey, and you're really passionate about the Montessori education, which is great to hear. You've given me such an interesting insight into the world of Montessori and how you're adapting for that 21st century and trying to broaden that outreach. It's been lovely speaking to you about it. Thanks ever so much for your time today, Karen, and I wish you all the best for the future.
You too, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.